Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this great session that we have here. My name is Greg Kahn, and I'm an investor and advisor in Web 2.5, the intersection of media technology and advertising. And I am thrilled to be joined by 5 esteemed panelists today, and we're going to talk about everything related to the immersive at-home experience, starting with streaming. And I don't want to take up too much time in the introduction. I want to get to the session because we have 40 minutes, and I know that we could spend easily an entire day in this conversation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first just ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves. I'll share a few statistics just to kind of level set on where we are in the industry here at CES. And then we'll have an engaging discussion for the next 40 minutes or so. So I'm going to start to my right here with Dan.
Hi, everybody. Dan Robbins, Vice President of Marketing and Partner Solutions. Hello to everybody on the right side of the room. I apologize if I'm a voice of God hiding behind the podium, but it's great to be here.
Hi, my name is Liz Reamersma. I'm Vice President of International Programming for Dish Network and Sling TV. It's great to be here.
Hi, I'm Chao Huang, and I head growth and engagement for Amazon's 3D across all surfaces, Fire TV, LG, and Roku as well.
Great, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rajan Mehta. I'm with WWE. I'm the company's Chief Product and Technology Officer.
And lucky last, good afternoon, Tony Marlowe. I am the CMO at LG Ad Solutions.
Thank you. So let's kick off with a couple of statistics. We're here at CES 2023. Thank God we're here in person. It's so great to see you all, not on a Zoom call. Let's talk about some of the statistics that were released today at CTA. So projected technology retail revenues are expected to be $485 billion in 2023, which is above pre-pandemic levels. Just to give a bit of context, it was $435 billion in 2019. But that's down from 2021 and 2022, which was about $500 billion. What are some of the notable areas of growth? Of course, it includes technology services, which we're here to talk about today. That includes gaming, video, audio, and apps, which are projected to grow for the 5th year in a row. 151 billion in consumer spending is expected to happen this year. And CTA put out a notable quote this morning, which will lead into this panel. The streaming market is especially competitive, with major brands vying for consumer attention in the home. Parks Associates also put out some numbers. They project OTT service subscriptions will rise from 518 million in 2022 to 617 by 2027, which is a 20% increase over 5 years. And since 2016, the average number of connected devices has almost doubled, rising from 9 per household in 2016 to 16 this year. So incredibly competitive environment. This panel, fortunately, are representing a growth area in this industry. And let's get into the conversation kind of where we are. And I'm going to start again with Dan, because there was a really exciting announcement this morning from Roku. You announced your first ever Roku branded televisions, or made televisions, and a wireless soundbar here at CES. So you're becoming the hub of the connected home. By debuting this line of 11 TVs, you're also expanding your list of audio products. My first question to you, Dan, is what do you see as the current state of the digital home? And what advancements have you seen happen during this time of COVID, and now that we're coming out of that period of time, that enables and empowered Roku to help to build this hardware business on top of your services business?
Yeah, we're very excited to be launching our own Roku branded televisions. Our mission has been better TV for everyone. And that started years ago with creating players and sticks that plug into televisions. It then expanded to actually licensing our operating system out to smart TV manufacturers. We're now the #1 TV OS sold in the US. And then most recently, today, it expands further with our own branded televisions, where we've got 11 different products used all under $1,000 that range from 24 inches to 75 inches. Bring the best of Roku into a Roku branded TV. And we're very excited that this is just a further evolution in the work that we've already been doing. To your question, Greg, about, well, where is sort of the marketplace today and perhaps where is it going? What I think we're most excited about is that streaming has really become mainstream. 1 in 3 homes in America don't have traditional pay TV. Over the last 2 years, streaming consumption has really accelerated. And what's most exciting to us has been the growth of different business models. Our mission in Better TV for Everyone has been to bring publishers, advertisers, consumers all together. And we feel that there's really a rising tide with all boats. And so as ad-supported streaming services, subscription services, rental, and more have all grown, it's a huge opportunity for the next sort of chapter of the industry as we think about what the living room looks like in the next 2, 5, 10 years.
Thanks, Dan. Tao, let's talk about Amazon and your perspective of this digital home. I mean, backstage, you and I were chatting about the first time that Alexa was featured here at this show. I did a session around that. It was an exciting time for voice activation. What's your perspective from where we are today in the digital living room and the digital home?
Yeah, no, I think that the most exciting part has been the growth of ad-supported, of AVOD within streaming. And what we've seen, and actually the origin story of Amazon Freevee is that we saw customers on Fire TV and Prime Video search for free movies and free TV. And what we've seen sort of in the past 3 years is really this incredible demand and appetite for premium, ad-supported content. And I think the distinction that we have at Freevee and what we've seen as a differentiator has been the exclusive originals coming out of Amazon Studios for Freevee that are well-produced, broadly appealing, and really on par with TV, with cable broadcast, as well as SVOD. And that we've seen has been just a real sort of motivator of growth for us as well.
Great. So tons of content, ad-supported content. Roger, I'm going to ask you next, kind of your perspective. You represent certainly a passionate audience around wrestling and entertainment. Love to get your perspective, kind of on what does the immersive home mean to you in 2023?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So when you look at the at-home experience from 5 years ago, 10 years ago to where we are now, it's moving really fast, right? The Alexas that didn't exist, the Roku devices that didn't exist. So what we look at is this is great for a content provider, right? So someone who has IP like us at WWE, you have something like as you were talking about with the wrestling fan base, right? We do shows live Monday, Tuesday, and Friday in the US, and that's core programming. But there's so much that goes beyond those shows, right? So Monday Night Raw, Tuesdays NXT, and Fridays SmackDown. How else are you filling up those other hours? So we do about 40 hours a week of free content that's on social and digital platforms. So those are all part of the at-home experience. Again, whether you're watching on your television, your mobile device, or whatnot, there's podcasts that are available that you start getting access to with your smart speakers. So you see this ecosystem built of streaming platforms, gaming platforms, podcasting, and smart speakers. And as a content holder, that's a lot of opportunity to bring your IP, your content out to consumers. And that's how we're taking a look at it.
That's great. Liz, I'm going to turn it to you next. And you represent sort of the international side of the business. And I think often at CES, it's important to get the perspective of, what's happening here in the US vis-a-vis what's happening in other territories. I'd love to get your sense of where do you see the market today and how does it differ from internationally than what we're seeing here in the US?
Sure. And in my role, what I do is I take content from outside of the US and I bring it in the US. And we typically are marketing and selling to other expats or immigrants. What we've spent the past couple of years doing is, in my business specifically, is actually doing API integrations with direct-to-consumer streaming platforms from outside of the US, right? We probably have done about 20 so far. Our domestic business has actually started doing this as well. And the idea was really, we wanted to be able to create the best content and bring the best content into the home for our customers. And we were finding increasingly the best content wasn't actually going onto linear TV. So we devised this sort of integration that allows to bring the best new content, totally different formats, way different level of engagement. Shorter formats, more shoulder content. What we've seen is actually changed the behavior of the viewer, right? So where we would typically see someone sitting down in front of their TV for hours, what we're seeing is more of an extended life or an extended behavior of the user with this content, right? It's going from primary TV viewing device over to mobile, back. And what we look at is really how do we change and deepen the experience so that the engagement can continue across those platforms.
Thank you for your perspective. All right, Tony, certainly not least, I'm not going to say last year, but your perspective, LG Ads is a separate unit from LG, but I'd love your perspective in the overall organization. Again, how do you look at the digital home in 2023 differently than you may have looked at it, let's say 2 or 3 years ago?
It is funny. We're at an electronics convention, but it all starts with people. And what we're observing right now is people have this insatiable appetite for content. And you referenced it before. I mean, with the onset of the pandemic, there was maybe a 3-week period where we potentially saw 3 years worth of transformation in terms of content consumption, in terms of shifting from linear to streaming TV. And at LG Ads, we call this the big shift. Phase 1 of the big shift at the onset of the pandemic was adoption of streaming content on bigger screen in the home. Rapid adoption, people that traditionally didn't do that started to do it. At the onset, it was really underpinned by subscription services. So my Netflix, my Disney Plus, my Paramount Plus. Now we're observing a second fundamental shift, and that is not necessarily a shift away from subscription, but leaning into ad-supported models. And we recently did a piece of research that was run in the US, UK, Canada, some other markets. 70% in the US, 70% of TV viewers actually prefer ad-supported models. Through the course of adding a lengthy list of subscription services, the cost has increased. You've got economic headwinds, fears of recession. People are now still wanting more content. That appetite hasn't been satiated, and it's now starting to really explode through fast AVOD ad-supported models. And I think that is the biggest shift we're observing right now, and it goes back to people.
I like that, going back to people. Okay, we set the context. There's more content than ever, served up in as many forms as we've ever seen. Is that better for the consumer? So I'd love for each of your perspectives, and anyone could kind of jump in here. Today, January 2023, with more content than ever before, more platforms than ever before, is the consumer winning?
I would say yes and no. I mean, yes, there's amazing content. You could spend the rest of your life consuming content, never leave your room, never leave your house, and you're spoiled for choice, but it's kind of overwhelming. From a consumer standpoint, I don't think that we've made it easier for consumers. I spend a lot of time focusing on this, but I don't think that, I don't think there's a consumer out there who wants to be subscribing to 10, 12, 15 services, right? So I think that we're going to see a really interesting couple of years. And the reality is they don't need to subscribe to them for very long. So we're putting a lot of power into consumers' hands, which is great, but I'm not sure they want necessarily all of the power, right? Like it's a lot. It's I think can be overwhelming.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's exciting in what comes next is going to be discovery. And it's something that we, as the largest streaming platform, have put a lot of focus into, because there's some research from Nielsen that it takes the average consumer 7 minutes to figure out what to watch. And we've thought a lot about how do we actually make that journey shorter. It's a cold start problem. And we've done a couple things. One, we launched zones where we actually take specific types of content. If you are looking for sports, there's just a sports zone that takes everything across our platform and puts it in one place. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you can actually search with your phone for Harry Potter. It'll come up and bring up a hub just for Harry Potter. You can see everything there. We've also started things like Featured Free, where we pull from a bunch of different services and surface up free content. We've launched the Roku channel, which is a top 5 free ad-supported channel in the US. We put live TV in there that has a bit of a TV guide feature in it. And so we've been really thinking about lots of different ways to try to make content discovery easier. To me, this is the beginning. There's a lot more to go. And I think it's really exciting because for content owners, for marketers, for consumers, there's going to be a lot more interactivity and development as we move further into the streaming decade.
So I want to, go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think there's more to the story as well. So discovery, curation, definitely a part of it, but I also think it ladders up into just the overall experience, right? Like so for us at LG, we had a big announcement with Paramount Plus this morning, adding an extra 100 channels to LG channels. So this is like now over 400. It's going to be over 450 channels, cable-esque experience. It's free. And so what is your experience from go to what? We're seeing death of the dongle. People no longer need to plug a device into an HDMI port. We call this going direct to glass. It benefits the consumer because the experience of finding your content, seeing the content, even the ads, they don't have to be traditional video ads. They can be natively integrated into the skin of the TV. And so the entire experience is what really helps that resonate. And I don't think we've ever seen a better moment in connected television than right now. The discoverability is high. The amount of free content is just ever increasing. And as we said earlier, it's really around what the people want, and they want that integrated experience. They don't want 4 different devices plugged into a TV.
Very true. Okay, so we've talked about, again, there's more content, there's more discoverability, and there's room to grow in that area. I wanted to talk now about bundles. You know, Verizon had a big announcement leading into last year that they're going to be bundling different kinds of content together in a subscription model, which includes gaming, it includes things like wellness applications. When we often have these discussions, we're talking about long form, whether it's original content, you know, or scripted content or unscripted content, but there are other service offerings that consumers are also looking for. Additionally, they're also more and more interested in short form video. We've seen the rise of TikTok and other platforms through the couple of years during COVID. So I'm going to start with Rajan here just about your thoughts on bundles. And what do you see as will emerge in the next year or two, let's say, with respect to consumer bundles?
Yeah, so if you look at it, for those who aren't as familiar, back in 2014, WWE launched a direct-to-consumer video service. It's probably one of the earlier consumer services then. You know, at that point in time, you had Netflix out there, you had Hulu, but not to the volume that you have today. Right, so we launched the service 2014, did great. We're using Park Associates. We were one of the top 10 services in the country in terms of consumer subscriptions. So what we started looking at was, you start seeing these other content apps coming out that had a lot of content. Right? You had the Peacocks out there, you had Disney Plus out there, you have HBO Max coming out, and you start seeing where consumer appetites go, right? And you start seeing that people are going to stop wanting to have 10, 15 subscriptions because it becomes tough to manage, right? As a consumer, and the value proposition for those apps starts to tend to be variable, right? Because based on the content that you have. So we started taking a look at it, and what made sense for us was to take our content offering, the WWE Network, and put it on one of those apps. So we did a deal with Peacock, and we launched it in early 2021 in the US, and it's been great. We've seen our consumption increase because of the broad-based distribution for Peacock, and so we were able to see more and more people watch WWE content. So it worked out really well for us. And so the reason I bring that up is as you start taking a look at why we made that decision, we made that decision because we thought it would be better for the consumer. Right? It gives them more opportunity for other content, and it was better for WWE. So those are the two primary factors, right? You look at it, what's best for your business, and you look at what's best for the consumer. So then to go to your question of where the industry's going, start looking at it that way, right? If people are going to struggle with 10 to 15 subscription services, does it make sense to start putting it together, right? And so now you start hearing folks like Disney who have ESPN Plus, Hulu, and they're Disney Plus, and they bundle it together, right? So you already start seeing that happen. So what's to stop the next set of bundles where you have manufacturers like my colleagues on the panel or distribution partners, the cable partners, putting their bundles together. It's kind of going back to the great unbundling that happened over the last 10 years ago, and now the great rebundling, and that's kind of how you should start taking a look at it.
I like that. And I think from our perspective, it creates really winnable moments. So being able to aggregate moments like here's Pride content aggregated and brought to you by your favorite insurer, or here's holiday content, holiday movies, TV shows, new and classic, brought to you by your favorite retailer. And it really changes the definition of what we think of as a bundle. And it's just right there, seasonally relevant, potentially even weather relevant in terms of ads and content, using data signals and what we know about people to give them the content they want and give them the ads that are actually relevant.
So bundles are diversifying, right? There's more and more different types of content. And why is that happening? It's happening that companies are realizing they need new revenue streams, new ways to reach consumers. And so two ways that they're able to increase their revenue is one through advertising and the second through e-commerce. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about those two areas. And Liz, let me get your perspective on the advertising side first. What's your perspective on a good advertising experience in 2023 with respect to CTV?
I think a good advertising experience is one that's as relevant to you as possible, right, as a consumer. And I'm speaking as a consumer, but I'm also speaking as someone who's managing an ad business, right? It's extremely valuable to the advertiser, but the consumer, we've literally had customers contact us say, I'm so amazed that the car dealership that's like around the corner from me is advertising to me on Arabic TV. Like, that's just weird, right? But that's the reality. Like, it's not the ability to actually go directly to someone, get them exactly something that's so specific, so relevant to them, I think actually creates a really beautiful experience. As much as advertising can be a beautiful experience, it's a good experience.
So there's a little thread of privacy that's starting to enter, or a big thread, I should say, of privacy that's entering into this conversation starting years ago with GDPR and CCPA and other big movements that were taking place, and it's going to continue this year on the digital side of the business. Obviously, Apple upended a lot of conversation around what data means to consumer ownership of data and how everyone's reacting. I'd love to get your perspective on data, right? From a television perspective, it sounds like that relevance and that personalization is important to consumers to a degree. But what is that degree? And Dan, just your perspective on just the privacy element, how do you think about that with respect to personalization?
What I think is exciting about streaming television is it's got all of the signals that you have in the digital world, but it's on the television screen. And where we think about that going in a world of privacy and choice is one where companies like many of us up here that have a direct consumer relationship are going to be able to change and adapt what their experience looks like to meet the customer needs. And so that means knowing who your consumer is, knowing how they can actually go to change their preferences, who they can call if they have a question. And that, as we move forward, no matter how the landscape changes, I think is going to be the core bedrock and what separates a platform that's going to be able to be responsive and adjusting and one that's going to be able to change. The thing that we've often thought about in building better TV for everyone is that privacy by design has to be at the core of it. And so giving flexibility, choice, and preference to the consumer is really table stakes when they think about what do I want to watch, what should be in my home, and what brands do I give my trust to.
Yeah, would love your perspective too on privacy.
Yeah, no, I definitely at Amazon, privacy is at the very top, right? Our customers trust us with their credit card, and that is sort of the highest priority for us. And I think that we are lucky in the sense that because we have a large customer base, I can speak for Amazon Freebie, where our customers would sign in. That allows us to obviously have more information and more interaction with them. And then for our other customers, it's based on, pulling from what we learn, what we've what we know from whether it's operating other businesses at Amazon Prime Video, Fire TV, Alexa that you mentioned, and making sure that what we give to them is as personalized as possible, and keeping in mind that that extends to advertising as well, right? Which, Liz, you mentioned, having ads that are relevant, ads that would add to the viewing experience is critical to that. So I think I would definitely echo what's been said.
Tony, from your perspective, LG ads, how are you thinking about privacy?
Well, just to build on the previous point, completely agree. All marketing, in my opinion, is about making a connection with your audience. That is literally every single marketing effort is trying to do that. So relevance is key. And in CTV, we've got the luxury of taking the recent learnings from the broader digital ecosystem. So you referenced it. Basically, there's 3 layers of movement on privacy. You've got the regulatory, so I think GDPR, CCPA, all the other cool acronyms. You have device level, so things like Apple's change in policy around IDFA going from opt-out to opt-in means it's less trackable. And then at the browser level, the part of the conversation that usually consumes the most oxygen, death of the cookie, marching to the end of 2024. All of these things within non-CTV digital essentially did one thing. They reduced the efficacy of cookie audience-based targeting. They forced marketers to do one or both of 2 things. Either resolve identity in a privacy-friendly alternative way, or, and many were doing this, lean into contextual targeting. And within these environments, when you're leaning into contextual, marketers learn very quickly, you can make a meaningful connection, you can be very relevant, and I don't need to know a lot about you because I understand the context in which this connection is occurring. And so when you bring those learnings to CTV, we know a lot about what's being viewed on a TV. You don't need to know a lot about the individuals on the other side of the glass, and you can create very privacy-friendly yet meaningful connections with your audience. And I think that's the cool thing about CTV.
Let's talk a little bit about the e-commerce element. When you think about relevance, when you think about what consumers are demanding, right? We were having a chat backstage about drones being delivered today, the drone delivery taking place in Texas. It's sort of just-in-time delivery that we've trained consumers over the past couple of decades to reach. And sort of the holy grail has been for television that the thought is that I'm going to see the item on TV, that pair of kicks that I want to get on screen, or in the case of a car, I'm going to be able to do a test drive right from my driveway by clicking on a button. Where are we in 2023, guys? We've been talking about this for 10 years of or more about being able to do that on television. And I'll start with you, Dan. Where do you think we are with e-commerce?
I think we're making a lot of exciting progress. There's an opportunity to make commerce on television as easy as it is on social. Last year, we announced a partnership with Walmart where we made ads on the television screen shoppable with a click of the remote. So you see a Walmart ad, it's selling a computer, you click OK, and you get an email in your inbox with the shipping detail fulfilled by Walmart. We're still in early days of testing that, but we've learned a couple of really key things. The first is that there is real interest in shopping from the television screen, and we're starting to see really strong consumer adoption. The second thing has been ease and simplicity is incredibly important. And so we found that using QR codes don't really work very well because there's too many steps to get from initial discovery all the way through to purchase. So just clicking the OK on your Roku button actually leads to much higher conversion. And then the third is that this is going to really have to change creative in television as well. And so the ad needs to tell the consumer that, hey, you can actually buy this product now. And it's going to, I think, really adjust the way we think about communicating message when television has the ability not just to be a performance platform, but also a commerce platform.
Liz, your perspective?
I have more of a personal perspective. I can't wait, really. I mean, like it's already problematic for me when I'm on social media when I'm seeing ads that are really specific to me. I spend really quickly. So my husband doesn't want it, but yeah, no, I mean, I think it's tremendously exciting, and it is something that we've been talking about for like it feels like decades. So I feel like the faster we get there, the better.
Well, my wife is sitting in the audience, can attest to my Amazon purchasing. So I'm gonna turn it to you, Tao. Also, your perspective on where we are from e-commerce TV.
Yeah, no, and I think sort of in addition to the transaction, like the ability to transact via your devices, we've also seen just a greater ability to bring customers along the purchase funnel. An example I wanted to bring up was the virtual product placements by Amazon Ads, something that we launched last year, where now, in the past, product placements usually takes months, sometimes years before a movie is finished or premieres, and by then you can't change the creative. And with virtual product placements, brands can insert organically their products into, whether it's fan favorites, like Leverage Redemption, which is one of the originals on Freebie, and be able to be really front and center with the audience, where they're engaged, where they're bought in and excited and invested. We saw that with Coffee Mate, which participated in a virtual product placements for 3 episodes, so a very extended campaign. And what we saw from the brand lift data afterwards is double-digit growth in product recall, positive product sentiments, and intent to buy. So I think there is the element of allowing the transaction to happen, but also just a lot of work to kind of use premium video content to bring people along as well.
Roger, I'm going to pivot slightly to you, because on the back half of this session, I want to make sure we touch upon a couple things, and then I'm going to ask you all for a prediction, because we're at CES, so we have to leave with some predictions for the year ahead. I want to address gaming and short form / social content and how you see those worlds coming together. I'm going to talk to you first about gaming. It's an enormous industry. For some reason, I use the phrase that gaming came out of the basement in the past couple of years. It was perceived as being teenage boys in the basement playing Xbox, and it's now gamification of everything has taken place, but it's often not discussed in this broader context of long-form content, right, or even CTV. What's your perspective? I know the WWE audience is hugely passionate about gaming. What's your perspective on where is it converging, and where is it separate from this broader conversation around CTV?
It's a good question. So just as background, WWE, we over-index with gamers. So of our fans, we saw about 85% of them are gamers. And so when you start thinking about it, the initial reaction is, oh yeah, let's create a game, right? But it goes beyond that, right? We look at that immersive experience that we've been talking about. So yeah, we have a game, we have a console game. It's done great. WWE 2K, it's millions of games sold for Xbox and PlayStation. It's been phenomenal. We're excited about it. We've been working in that game space. It's the #1 combat game that's out there. So then you start taking a look at that. You're like, great, that game works. People love it. People buy these every year, and they go, what else can you do with gaming, right? So we have casual mobile games, and that's another part of that immersive experience. It does great. We have a lot of downloads. There's the advertising piece that's integrated in that as well. It's like, great, you got this mobile game, you got this console game. It's that audience, right? People who love your content, the people who over-index when you have that Venn diagram. And you go, well, what about content? What kind of content can you create? And so we, many years ago, launched a YouTube channel, going back on an AVOD piece here. And it's called Up, Up, Down, Down. And it was a couple of superstars, again, going back to our brand, our IP, that talked about gaming, and it became one of the top YouTube channels out there. We have our W2K game that I was mentioning, and we have a Twitch channel on that. Over 10 million hours of people watching on Twitch, watching this specific game being played, right? So you start seeing all these different avenues that start touching everything that we talked about that goes beyond the IP that we have that was created by looking at the gaming aspect, right? So it's a different way of looking at it, but it's how you can take your content and look at all the stuff that we're talking about and bring it to your fans.
Tony, your perspective on gaming?
It's interesting. About a decade ago, maybe slightly more, there used to be a company called Immersive Inc., and they essentially did measurement of in-game advertising. They released a report, and it's subsequent. What they found has subsequently been demonstrated over and over again, but this was the first time I ever saw it. And they essentially found that ads within gaming environments could dramatically enhance the satisfaction with it. So, for example, if you're playing a Formula One game and there's a complete absence of sponsorship, that's really different to the real world experience. I want my gaming experience to be like real Formula One. I want the ads to be there. And so then you start to talk about dynamic insertion. How do you bring the experience? And so gaming is rolling in hard. I think cloud gaming in particular may catch many by surprise this year. And I think the ad opportunity is much like that massive study from a decade ago. I think you'll start to see as the year rolls on, people talking about how can I actually make that consumer connection within the game. particularly with cloud gaming being, it really lends itself to being able to do that. I don't think console gaming is going anywhere, but I think this casual, lower barrier entry into gaming, whether directly via your TV set or on your mobile, is going to be critical.
So we're in this interesting paradigm. I think half the conversations here at Digital Hollywood are about streaming, OTT fast, and half are about XR, VR, augmented reality, metaverse broadly, Web3, and I do advising on both sides of that. I want to chat a little bit just about sort of the social media movement and how that relates to the in-home experience too, and just from each of your perspectives where you're seeing it going. Let's say we're back in the room here in 5 years. Again, we've seen the rise of TikTok as well as Minecraft and Roblox and Reddit and many other platforms, but we started this conversation around the consumer experience, right? So where are we in 5 years, Dan, when we come back in this room and we have this mashup of short form and long form and mobile device and TV? Just your perspective from where you sit, where do you think that we're going to be at? What is the conversation going to look like?
I wouldn't presume to know what the conversation will be in 5 years because it moves so fast, but I do think that there will be convergence and that some of these things are going to start to come together. Last year, we launched the Buzz on our platform, which brings the ability for social conversation to exist on the television screen. So you are a studio and you're promoting a movie and you want to actually share clips and updates about what's happening. You are an actor and you want to promote the new show that you're pushing out on a circuit or junket, and you want to make sure that people see it and it's top of their home screen. So that curates all of your favorites in one place. And it allows for a little bit of that social interaction, but in the living room. We also know that consumers mostly watch TV with their phones in their hands or sitting next to them. So these things will start to come together. In what shape or form, I think we're all still discovering, but it's one of the reasons why it's such an exciting space to be in.
Liz, again, you bring international formats here to the U.S., and we know from consumer experience that just the number, if you look at the numbers of people that are consuming content on all these different devices, social media, mobile platforms, mobile first platforms, what are you seeing from your lens in terms of this collaboration between old and new?
We have, as I said, we package now really new short form content or original content with linear TV. What we are seeing though, at least as it relates to my customers, is when we release interactive features, like for example, Sling has a watch party feature, really great feature. This is something that, we built, we had a hunch that it would work. It really over-indexed tremendously for my customers. And in retrospect, it kind of makes sense, right? Because if you're coming here as an immigrant from India, you might want to, your friends from your hometown are not necessarily going to be in your hometown in the US, so that makes sense. Maybe you want to watch the cricket game together, the cricket match together. The aspects of interactivity and driving that engagement with customers really where we're focused, Sling as a whole. We want to be able to increase engagement, extend out any kind of user sessions, and actually just their primary experience with our app in terms of entertainment. But we also know that we can't go forward into 2023, 2024, 2025, beyond without looking at actually unique experiences and how you make it so that it's not just the watching of the content that is what's back to the app. So I can't specifically say what we're going to be releasing, but we have a lot of focus in that area, and I would expect that would be really our theme as we're looking at new feature development.
Okay, we've got 1 minute left, so speed round. I'm going to start with you, Tal, on just a prediction for this audience. We're coming back here in 2024 in person. What's your prediction of what we're going to see?
I think that AVOD will continue to see increasing adoption as people worry more and more about costs and fatigue for subscription. So I do think AVOD will continue to have a really, really strong year.
Great, Roger.
So real quick, I did my first live stream 17 years ago. I was at the NBC Olympics. So that was, and when you say a long time ago, but when you think about it, you're like, wow, streaming is just here. No, it's been around for a while. It just has to evolve, right? So technology evolves. And so you'll see this continued evolution of technology that in 5 years you look back, you're like, wow, this changed really, really fast. So your piece here in about a year, you're gonna see an evolution of what we do today, right? You're gonna see AI, generative AI keep going. You're gonna see metaverse keep going. You're gonna see short form, long form keep going, and in 5 years, you can go, wow, things really move quickly.
Tony?
I completely agree with both of those. I think if 2022 was the year of fast, free ad-supported streaming television, 23 is where we go faster.
Love it. Liz?
I would echo the fast piece for sure. We're seeing a lot of growth in that area as well. I think it's it's the start of the great rebundling. I think consumers will drive a lot of this, but a lot of the sort of pulling apart of the ecosystem that's happened over the past couple of years, I think you'll start to see, it's a tough environment, people more willing to do partnerships where they may not have in the past, or distribution agreements where they not have in the past. So I think that's what you'll see for the next year, at least.
Thank you. And Dan?
I think we're going to make a ton of progress as an industry on discovery and curation. When we come back in a year, TV will be better and easier and simpler and more convenient than it ever has been.
And I'll close with my prediction. I think you'll see a lot more wellness content in the next year ahead. You're already seeing that at CES on the show floor with devices. I want to thank this incredible group of panelists, Tony, Rajan, Tao, Liz, and Dan for joining us. And thanks to all of you. Enjoy the rest of CES.